Hello and welcome to an action-packed episode of Dude, Is This Thing On? I'm your host, Tyler Daswick, and joining me, as always, our producer, Emilio Cariotti.
Hey, how's it going? I think you're super overselling. I hope it's action-packed, but it might just be a slow news day here at Ditto. We're in the midst of that dry spell, so instead of giving you something fresh, maybe, we're going to take a new look, I guess a fresh look, at an old classic that sort of flew under the radar. The Raid Redemption, which is the first one, coincidentally, and then the Raid 2
Berdeghalsjsoddldof.
Thank you. Right in there with the save.
I don't know what that means.
Me neither.
But,
I don't think it came up once during the actual movie. And at no point does anyone say the words redemption in the first one, so I think they're just titles.
Just titles. But this episode is action-packed because this is one of our favorite action movies.
Yes.
And so we are going to spend this special episode talking about it, talking a little bit about the sequel, and talking about kind of where it fits among action movies in general. But Emilio, I wanted to start here because I love this movie so much, and I know you do too. And so I'm always trying to tell people about it, but it's hard to sell people on, like, on its surface, an Indonesian action movie. People think they got to watch a lot of subtitles and all that stuff.
Well, the premise sounds really dumb. And
you think so?
Well, okay, no, it doesn't sound necessarily dumb. Let me rephrase, but it sounds like you've seen it before. There's like, how many times can you go on Netflix or whatever your platform is and go to the action section, and there's just a bunch of like garbage looking like Indonesian, Filipino, like just random Southeast Asian country / action movie, like a billion. We're going through like another sort of like era of just people like Nigerians. Have you ever seen like the Nigerian like action movie or whatever that gets passed around on like Reddit all the time?
No.
There's like one that like Nigeria has like one movie that they made, and it's like, so not to shit on Nigeria cinema, but it's like, it's not good. It's literally, if you've ever seen the movie Be Kind Rewind, when they they Swede a movie, it literally looks like a Swede of a better movie, but it's not. It's just the movie. In any case, that's sort of like what you get with a lot of those Indonesian movies, but in this haystack of shit action films, there just happens to be like one of the greatest action movies ever. I'm not a huge action fan, but holy shit. Like,
yes,
if there's something you need to dip your toes into, it's the Raid Redemption and the Raid Berdeghalsjsoddldof. Berdeghalsjsoddldof. Yes, great fucking movies.
Yes, great movies. So I don't know. I mean, it's funny that you call out the premise, because I think for an action movie, that is the easiest way to sell it. Be like, all right, there's a drug lord that's at the top of this 30-story building. Our hero is on the SWAT team, and they're tasked with getting him out.
Yes.
And the only way is to fight their way through every floor
to
reach the guy. And that's the entire movie.
I know. But I mean, a lot of people who aren't into action movies, say you're going up to, I don't know, your barista. You're like, Todd, and Todd's like, hey. You're like, Todd, you need to watch this movie. It's called The Raid Redemption, and it's about a drug lord, and they have to go through every floor, and blah, 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 blah. Your average Todd is not going to be like, oh, that sounds amazing. I'll spend money on it. You know? They'll be like, okay, sure. Is that going to be a chai latte? And then they get on with their fucking lives. So it's like, it's a hard sell for anyone. And honestly, it's not like we sniffed out this movie and, like, you know, we hunted it down and we're like, oh my God, the Raid's coming to America. I can't wait. It's literally, at least I walked into the theater with no expectation. Somebody dragged me to go see it. They're like, this movie's supposed to be fucking awesome. We're going to go watch it. I'm like, all right, sure. And I had the most fun in any movie in probably the past, like, 10 years, honestly. Like, actually in the theater fun. Just watching that movie with like 12 of my friends.
Yeah, I remember we saw it together. It was your second time, my first time. You basically just like paid it forward.
Yeah, I did. Like, I dragged you in, and I don't know if you were excited to see it, but I pretty much did the same thing where I was like, dude, you got to watch this fucking movie. I can't describe it. It's incredible. And then by the time you left, we were both like piles of Jello.
Yeah, and it is a super fun theater experience. It's a great group watch in college. We had a raid night where we watched the raid.
Oh yeah, I remember that in HQ.
Yeah, in HQ, and that was super cool. And then when the sequel came out, we went and literally just like occupied an entire row, and we were like screaming and yelling and cheering and like. But that's what like the movie evokes.
Yeah.
The original raid, still watching it, is like like you feel the hits.
Brutal. Yeah, you feel every bone crack, every knife in like the gut, every gun fired. It's just. God damn it. I know we're just, it's to anyone not seeing it, we're not making any sense. We might as well be speaking like Cantonese.
Yeah.
Like, it's really fucking good. And the production value is like awesome. So if you want to get into like the background of it, I know a little bit about the production. It's pretty much, what the fuck? Gareth Evans, not to be mistaken with Gareth Edwards, like we just found out. He's essentially this director from Wales who has like kind of a really short filmography, which consists of The Raid and The Raid 2, and what's Apostle, which is the movie that's going to be coming out with Chris Pine? Dan Stevens, excuse me, on Netflix. Is that the one that's set in like the Middle Ages?
No, that's Outlaw King. This one
that's
is
right. This is the one that. Oh, that's right. Yes, this is.
This is like the Wicker Man kind of movie.
This is like the Wicker Man meets the Raid, and you showed me the trailer to it, and the trailer's good, and I couldn't tell you why it's good, but it's good,
right.
And I'm excited to see this movie, and it could either be extremely good or extremely bad. But I feel like The Raid could have been like that too. It could have easily been garbage.
Oh yeah,
but honestly, the choreography kind of just does it all. Like whoever was like the martial arts instructor on the set of The Raid just fucking nailed it. Holy shit! It's incredible.
Yeah, so here's probably like a good place to start if you want to like dive into the background.
I'm lost here. I'm grasping for straws.
Exactly how would you describe the action? Because I just tell people, I'm like, pound for pound in terms of just like pure like fight scenes. You will not watch a better movie.
Yeah, it's true. My dad loves martial arts movies, like the Bruce Lee like ones from the 1960s where it's like dubbed over and it's like, oh, my kung fu is not as strong as yours, like that sort of shit.
Yeah.
And I mean that's like real. That's that's pretty real kung fu. You had Bruce Lee fighting like Chuck Norris, and they're both black belts, so they both knew what they were fucking doing. This blows that way out of the fucking water. Holy shit! I don't know what martial arts it is. I'm assuming it's some sort of like Malaysian. Like boxing or something like that.
I guess.
Some MMA shit, but it's not. When you see like, I don't know, what the fuck's her name? Ronda Rousey, whatever the fuck her name is.
Yeah, Ronda Rousey.
You know, when she was a big deal like 4 or 5 years ago, they just threw her in movies to like get butts in seats, essentially. Like she was in
She's in Furious 7.
Yeah, exactly. She's in like Furious 7. And then there's always a scene where, she does her MMA shit and puts someone in like an arm bar, or whatever the fuck it's called. And it just looks like, it just looks lame. It just looks like she just looks like, all right, now just wrestle a little bit, right? It just looks lame. I don't know how to describe it, but the martial arts here just looks more authentic. I don't know how to fucking say it. It's the most authentic looking martial arts movie I think I've ever seen. Hands down. I will absolutely back that up.
Yeah, I always tell people, I'm like, it's the kind of action where you'll be watching it and you'll think, I don't understand how like 3 people didn't die making this movie.
Right.
It's violent, but not in a gory way. In just a like, guys are just beating the shit out of each other.
I mean, it is kind of violent in a gore way also, but like it's not so ridiculous that there's just like fucking someone's head gets cut off and there's just blood spraying. It's not like Quentin Tarantino like esque, Right.
It's environmental. It's hand to hand. Everything is really fast. I think the one thing I really love, and we'll revisit this when we talk about one of the main scenes in the movie, kind of like the climax of all the action, is a lot of it amounts to one or like action hero in a hallway, and all these guys bum rush him, and he starts fending them all off. But you know how like in action movies, if a guy is outnumbered, there's a lot of like very convenient, oh, I stunned this guy, and I'll turn to this other guy.
Yeah.
And
everyone waits their turn to get their ass kicked.
Right. That does not happen
No.
in the raid. And that is to the movie's immense credit that it somehow choreographs everything so quickly and rapidly, and all the fighters and actors can carry it all out, that you're never like, oh, they could have totally gotten that guy and they didn't. It just is always like, oh wow, like I can't believe that guy survived that just total war.
Yeah,
it's insane.
I think that honestly is a credit to the setting, because like, I mean, it's not a super high action, like and a super high budget action movie. Not that you can tell. Honestly, you can't tell. Like, I'm sure the budget is like, I could look it up right now. I'm sure it's like $50,000 or something like that, right? Like, probably not a lot. Maybe a couple million. 50,000 is a little low. Lowballed it there. Budget $1.1 million. Literally a $1 million movie. But you can't tell. Honestly, you'd think it was like, a $100 million movie. But what that meant was they were very confined to the set that they could use. And so everything is interior. Everything is inside this shitty, like, Bangladeshi, Malaysian, like drug den. Essentially, it's just like a huge like 20-story building that's just all like, cracked out. Essentially, everyone in there's a fucking like crack addict. So all the fighting happens like within really small apartment complexes or really tight hallways and stuff like that. And so everything just seems very hard hitting, because the way that he fights in like a tight hallway against like 30 guys is you just need to fucking like mow your way through those people as quickly as possible while avoiding as much shit hitting you as quickly as possible. It's incredible. And the thing is, he's like a trained police officer, and he's have a bunch of crazy crack addicts with like butterfly knives and like broken baseball bats and shit like that, just rushing him. So like, it's a lot of people coming at you, but he can still like defend himself. I know it just sounds like we're fucking rambling, because you have to watch the movie to understand, but you have to fucking watch this movie, man. It's really fucking good.
Right. So, okay, but this is why I think the premise is super smart. It's, all right, drug lord at the top of the building, fight your way to the top and get him out. They pull so much variety out of that premise in terms of what the action looks like. So it starts out with kind of this like tight choreographed SWAT team where they're like taking out like the security guys on the perimeter and like breaching their way into the building and like taking care of like the drug addicts like in their bed, and everything is like really like machine like, and everything's going according to plan. And then of course things don't go to according to plan and all the chaos starts. But from there, like, you have an action scene in darkness, right, where they have this central stairwell.
That's right.
Where they use it so creatively. All the SWAT team is hunched at one end trying to hide. Meanwhile, one floor up and across the stairwell, a row of armed guns with like automatic rifles, and they're waiting for one speck of light to then open fire on all the cops. And so it becomes this like tension scene where like you're waiting for someone to basically blow it, and either like fire their weapon and the muzzle flash will illuminate everything, or like a door will open, or something unexpected. So suddenly you have the scene of tension. You have another scene that's set in a hallway where, there's different entry points for like the residents and the enemies to swarm in. There's a kitchen where suddenly like they're going to throw pots and pans, or they're going to incorporate the environment. Like there's like a hole in a ceiling, and there's like a 2-story fight, and guys are like jumping
the bamboo
down
sticks and shit like that.
Like, so
God damn it.
they get, I know, fuck. It's like just great scene after great scene, because they pull so much variety and mileage out of essentially just one building. Like what you're talking about. Like they stretch this budget and use it really creatively. So for essentially what's an hour and a half long action movie, it always feels fresh. It's always turning over. You're always seeing something that you haven't seen yet, which is so cool.
I think that honestly just goes to like the choreography, because those guys are in charge of like coming up with, like, looking at the environment and being like, okay, how can we choreograph some cool ass fight scene in this, make it realistic, and like make it like efficient looking, so that if somebody was watching this movie and they knew how to fight, they could be like, oh yeah, that's real. That's like a thing that you would fucking do in that fucking scenario. Not saying that I'm like that, but you can go on to like YouTube, and my favorite thing to do on YouTube nowadays is just look up like fight expert watches I don't know, Black Panther.
Okay.
Like he's like, that's
Yeah.
totally fucking unrealistic. Like fuck that. That's not real. And it's like Fight Expert watches John Wick, which we're gonna talk about in a second. He's like, that's pretty good. Like that's not bad. Like I would do that. That's maybe not the most realistic thing, but that's there's some good and there's some bad. I've yet to find the fight instructor who has watched The Raid. I'm sure there's probably a fucking video out there, but I'd love to see what they fucking say. But my main point is everything sort of relies on the fight coordinator and this sort of thing, and I wish that they would maybe take someone like this and put it in like a Marvel-esque movie, because the fight, especially the past few movies, holy shit. Like, I like Black Panther for what it is, but like I said when we did the review of that movie, that ending fight scene was just like stupid. It's just the action in all of these Marvel movies is just mind-numbingly stupid. It's just flashes and like CGI is killing me. And in a movie with $1 million budget, there's no CGI in this thing. Everything is practical effects, and I miss that so fucking much. You can't make them like that anymore in the States. It costs too much fucking money.
Yeah, and I think The Raid is so good too at like the peaks and valleys of action. I think there's an awesome scene in this. And this is another thing I think is cool about the premise. The premise is a little video game-ish.
Yeah, it is. It's like you're getting up to Donkey Kong.
Right, like there are levels, and there are kind of like mini bosses, and then there's a main boss at the end. And one of these mini bosses is this guy who just like walks around with this giant machete.
Yeah,
and
the
he's
Mad
kind
Dog.
of no, that's the main boss.
That's true.
This machete guy is darker skinned. I think he might be bald, but he's got this giant machete, and he's kind of the enforcer, and he like goes around, and he's sort of hunting for the cops in probably the first third to half of the movie. And at one point, the cops are shacking up in this apartment where they find this ally who's on their side, and the ally stashes them in this secret room that they have. And the guy in the machete comes in to search for the cops, and he starts stabbing the wall.
Oh yeah,
that he suspects is secret. You remember this shit?
Yeah, I do.
And it's an incredible, what you would call it a set piece, probably.
Yeah.
Like it's a confined moment of high tension and high action, and this guy's machete stabs are getting closer and closer to where they're hiding, to the point where it gets so close it cuts the guy's cheek, and then he has to grab the blade as it pulls back. So he wipes the blood off, and it comes away clean. It's so intelligent.
Yeah.
It's super smart.
Yeah. And just the pacing. I like you're saying the pacing is perfect, because that's a set piece that's very high tension, and so your heart's still beating fast and you're still on the edge of your seat. But there are a few moments that are calm. Like actually like moments for the characters to breathe, especially after like a big fight. After every big fight, there's usually like a 2 to 3 minute like scene where he's just sort of like breathing heavily, like looking around to the carnage, and that like allows the audience to kind of catch their breath too. And trust me, you need it. You're not gonna think like, oh, this movie's gonna make my heart rate. No, it like actually does. That's the magic of this movie, is that you feel like you're like tied to the rafters above the room that this guy's like fighting in. That's how fucking like authentic it sort of feels. And you have an adrenaline rush, an unexplainable adrenaline rush the entire time you're watching this movie. No other movie has done that for me since. Like I've seen dramas and stuff, like that evoke other emotions, but no other movie has really gotten like pure adrenaline like this movie fucking gets. I cannot describe it. It's undescribable. Indescribable.
Right. I don't know where that comes from either. I think another thing that kind of speaks to the authenticity we're talking about, and I think the camera work in these movies is so good. And I was thinking about it, especially in the second one, where they kind of elevate everything. The first one has a few shots that are just so damn cool. Like in the one where there's the hole in the ceiling, hole in the floor, and guys are jumping down. A SWAT guy jumps down through the hole in the floor, starts fighting. You watch another guy jump through in like one take, and then the camera guy jumps down, and he keeps it on the action, and it is unbroken. And you're like, holy shit! So it's very like, it feels like very like guerrilla footage. The takes are really long. The cuts all kind of like are like, all right, now let's just show the best possible way to get this next like run of hits, this next combination, this next move, whatever.
Yeah.
But there really aren't like a ton of frenzied cuts, like frankly, like you'd see in like a, I don't know, like a Liam Neeson movie or something now, where they kind of have to mask his age and like lack of abilities a little bit.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. That's funny. Yeah, it's all the stuff. I think that honestly comes from not being like a Hollywood director. Like,
Okay.
it's not. I seriously doubt anyone who worked on this movie has like an established career in Hollywood. Now, I don't know about now, but at the time, and I think that is to their great benefit instead of detriment. Like, I think Hollywood is kind of catching up to this. You mentioned the like guy jumping through the hole, kind of like guerrilla style, and I remember you talking about that scene in Mission Impossible movie where they did that take like 150 fucking times of him jumping through the airplane just to get it. Like, well, that's pretty much the same thing. Like, that's the same idea. The same basic principle is follow the subject, like don't do any cuts and try and get it all in one take. But people have been doing that. People outside of Hollywood have been doing that for a little whiles now, and it just looks like Hollywood's action scene is sort of finally coming around to that, thankfully, because it just looks better than... Like, go back and watch an action movie from, like, the 90s. It's just bad, you know? It doesn't age well, and so it just doesn't look... Anything... Early 2000s, I think I just watched, like, The Italian Job recently, which I wouldn't say is necessarily an action-packed movie, but, you know, there's still some scenes, you know? Like, Jason Bourne. Go back and watch the original Jason Bourne. That has really good choreography, but it's still, like, a lot of fast-moving blur, fucking vision, shaky cam bullshit that just, like, doesn't look good anymore.
Yeah, it's it feels a little bit like, especially when you watch those kind of 90s movies, it feels a little like WWE wrestling. You know, where like, okay, like I can kind of see the cracks in this.
Yeah.
Like, obviously WWE really see the cracks, but
what? No, it's real, isn't it? That's real.
Yeah, we gotta talk, dude. But yeah, those you can kind of like, all right, you know, I can tell like these guys aren't like super trained fighters, and they had to kind of bring in the specialist, and you know, especially with the raid, and these guys are themselves martial arts experts. These are the actors. They were brought on because they are really good at fighting. And it makes all the difference in the movie, as opposed to, you know, like, not to, you know, crap on Marvel, because I think they're trying to do different stuff with their action, but, you know, it's the stunt doubles just kind of show after a while.
Yeah, it just gets tiring, you know. But something like this, like, so the second movie comes out like 2 years or something after the first one, and I don't know what your expectations were. Even after the raid was so good, I was like, well, you know, that was probably just like a one-off thing, being cynical asshole Emilio. Watch it, just as good. Honestly, it's maybe just not as good, just because the first one was so incredible, it takes you by surprise. But if you go into the second movie being like, this is gonna suck, be a piece of shit, no, it's a good movie. It's like genuinely a good sequel, like excellent follow up. I was super surprised. I was more surprised that the second movie was as good as it was than maybe I was that the first movie was as good as it was, because like you just have that expectation of like, well, they'll never do that again, like the dick you are. And then you go and watch it, and they totally did it again. It's just as fucking good. So it proves that formula is repeatable and it doesn't get stale.
Yeah, we'll talk about the second movie in a little more depth, but before we leave the first movie entirely, we kind of talk about it in terms of a video game, and you mentioned him. The Mad Dog character is so awesome in this movie. He's set up as kind of like the ultimate challenge. Going to be their last gateway to the drug lord. And the movie culminates in this 2-on-1 fight between our hero, his brother, against Mad Dog in a single room. And it is fucking spectacular.
It really is. It is like a showdown. Like you said, the mini boss fights, all the mini boss fights feel, if it was a video game and you had to actually fight that boss, it would be a good boss. You'd be like, damn, that was fucking challenging. Like, there wasn't an easy win. There wasn't like, oh, you know, shoot the ceiling and the chandelier falls on him sort of like bullshit. It was like a solid fight. And so the Mad Dog character, I think you're absolutely right. Like, the showdown is like incredible. It's probably one of the best scenes in the entire movie, honestly. And in a movie full of really good scenes, it's probably one of the best.
Yeah, it's so cool. Like, this is the one, one thing I think modern action has a hard time with is, I think, especially John Wick. John Wick has incredible action, but its nightclub scene is like probably clearly its best in the original.
Yeah.
And that's like the first act climax of the movie.
Right.
And then it can't, it's trying to top itself for the next hour, but it can't. The Raid gets better as it goes.
Progresses, yeah. And same thing with the second one too.
Yes,
Yeah.
the second one is equally effective. Every scene is better than the scene before it. And I think the Mad Dog fight is one of the best action scenes I've ever seen. It's so good, and it is one also like, because it's one of the first times, and a lot of these like 80s 90s action movies will position like the final bad guy. They'll have like a final battle, final showdown, especially with those like, you know, Kurt Russell, Schwarzenegger type movies.
Yeah, the classics. Sylvester Stallone, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And this one where they build this guy up the whole time, and they have to fucking earn it against this dude. And you get essentially like a 10, just 12-minute battle.
Like ballet of death.
Yeah.
It's good.
And it's great. And even though it's 2-on-1, like there's no like weird contrivances like we were talking about, where like one guy's rolling on the ground and like can't, you know, take him while he's distracted or anything. It's
everyone
expert.
pulls their weight. It's just it is. It's really good. It's a really fucking good movie. Like, and if you're worried about the whole like subtitle thing, like, honestly, the plot is really just I mean, the whole movie is kind of show don't tell. There is obviously some talking. There's a really serviceable, really good like kind of plot that you follow, that sort of like the skeleton that all the meat and tendon and everything like goes on. It's definitely like worth it. But if you're worried about sitting there like reading subtitles a lot, you know, not too much of that. So like, it's a lot of show don't tell. So it's just a very like visual movie. It's kind of like in the way that Drive is, not in the same way obviously, because Drive is like a different beast, but like a Nicholas Renth movie is very like visual, and so the dialogue is nothing.
Yeah. It's this movie is super lean. There's not a lot of story, and this takes us well to start talking about the second one, because the second one has awesome action, but really like basically is trying to be like a sort of like a crime epic, and tells this sort of like big, really large scale, like basically like Indonesian mob movie. And our hero from the first movie is it starts out literally the second the first movie
he's
ends.
Like exiting the building.
and they send him undercover into this crime family that is now at risk because of everything they did with the drug lord. And that stuff sort of has diminishing returns, because they make the, you know, actor do stuff that's not fighting. And he's
exactly. There's a little bit slower pacing, but still keeps you on your toes.
So I gave it a rewatch, and when it came out, I, like you, was blown away. I think the easiest way to compare it to the first one is, I think all the action is honestly probably better if you just took it like if you just like, if you took away all the other story stuff and just lined up each movie's action, you'll look at the second one and be like, yeah, honestly, they just had more money so they could just do more shit.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as confined. You have multiple sets now. You have like, you know, just more villains, I guess, and some of them are more like dramatic and stuff. So it's just like they had more opportunity, and that's not to say that the first one, you know, was bad because of that, but it's interesting to see like, wow, look, I mean, if you threw these guys like $50 million, imagine what they could fucking give you. You know, I want to look up keep talking, but I want to look up the budget on the second one just to see like how much it jumped.
Oh yeah, that'd be interesting. Yeah, it's kind of the difference of like with the first movie, they handed these guys like a hammer and nails and were like, build a house. And then you went and you're like, oh shit, this is the most incredible house I've ever seen with a hammer and nails.
They quadrupled the budget to $4.5 million.
Holy shit. That's honestly like still cheaper than I expected.
That's nothing. I expected like $6.
I mean, I expected honestly more. Like they do some really insane stunts in the second movie. Like they crash like cars through buildings multiple times.
Like transporter shit. Like the transporter is garbage. Like that's a garbage fucking action movie. And like a mid 2000s. Like I love Jason Statham, but fuck, dude, that's trash. But that's considered like a great American action movie. How many people have you met who's like, oh, I love the Transporter series? Like, pfft. And it's the same shit. It's like crashing cars through buildings. There's a fight in the fucking airplane. Like pretty much all of that shit's in the Raid, and it just looks way fucking better. Yeah,
and so and they use stuff like there's a car chase in the Raid 2 that is so fucking cool. They take it to these more open spaces. The first third of the movie it takes place in a prison, and there's a huge prison yard fight. So the movie's really environmental. There's a couple of kitchen fight scenes that use like stoves and other kitchen tools really creatively. Guys are going through glass a lot in the second one. It's like very destructive. Whereas the first one, everything is already kind of like torn to shit anyway.
So it doesn't matter if someone goes through like a shitty wall.
Right. So I think all the action is definitely upped just because they can do more. And so they kind of just let everyone go. But as an overall movie, it's definitely like, okay, like I get why the first one didn't really have much of a story. Even though like the second one tells like a totally serviceable and solid crime story. It just, I just think like if you are looking for like an Infernal Affairs or like Departed or anything like that, like you're just not going to get it.
It's not going to be about that. Like the plot in these movies serves as the skeletal structure, and then all the other cool shit gets topped on top of that. What you get in most action movies is no one gives a fuck about the skeletal structure, and all they want to do is focus on the muscles, and they look like shit. It ends up looking like crap because it doesn't literally have a leg to stand on. What I think is really so unique about these movies is that if you actually look for it, there's a story there, and it's entertaining enough that you could be like, wow, that was a good story. And on top of that, everything else about it was fucking perfect. So it comes off like it all together. The average is out to like an A, like A- A movie. Like that's amazing for just like a low budget action movie.
Yeah, it's like getting served one of the best steaks you've ever had on a paper plate.
Right.
Really, like
that is a brilliant fucking example. Exactly.
Yeah. And like really at the end of the day, the presentation could have been better, but who gives a shit? You just had one of the best steaks of your life. Yeah. And so
damn, I'm gonna steal that.
Yeah, no, by all means, man. And like other stray observations about the second one, it's a little more on the rewatch, it's honestly like pretty fun because it's a little more comic booky and
very
how
colorful,
it like
from
like
what I remember.
All the like mob bosses are really kind of are really like hammy and like kind of rich in a cool way, and then the sort of mini bosses, if we want to keep like talking in the video game terms, that I think kind of work well. Those kind of become like a little bit more like super villainish. There's a girl that wields two hammers.
Yes.
And like that's like I think she's credited as Hammer Girl.
Yeah.
Like,
and we're not talking like Thor hammers, we're talking like claw hammers with like a duct tape handle.
Right. And there's a scene like literally just to introduce her where she just takes out a bunch of guys on a subway.
Yeah.
And it's insane.
Jesus.
There's another dude, he's in the credits as Baseball Bat Boy, and he's just a dude who beats guys to death with a baseball bat. Like
honestly, it gets kind of Kill Billy with like the villains, but
that's great.
It like in the same, it's not as hammy as like Kill Bill where it, like the camera fades to black and white and shit like that, and she like talks like no one breaks the fourth wall. But the way that the villains are, like I said, there's more character to the characters. They're more dramatic. There's more flair to it. And you would honestly think that wouldn't work, but it somehow fucking does. And it comes away really well. And I think that has a lot to do with the cinematography, too. Like, it just... How do you capture these characters and make them actually, like, threatening, but still unique, but not, like, really lame? It just works. I can't tell you why specifically, but just all these ingredients come together to form a very good sequel to a very good original film.
Yeah, and it's really splashy. Like a lot of the camera stuff, you can tell they were just like, oh man, wouldn't it just be so cool if we just did X, and then they just went and did it. Like, you know, there's a camera shot, dude, where this guy who's running from these mob guys who are going to put out a hit. He runs on this table and then he jumps off the table through a glass window. And on the screen, you watch it laterally. So he jumps sideways through the window and then crashes into this hallway on the other side of the glass. And the camera follows his entire trajectory on an arc as he jumps, like in real time. So the camera basically like jumps with him, goes through the glass with him, lands with him. And then like gets back up and keeps running.
How the hell did they do
like,
that? Like, how do you?
I know
you had to have
there
created
are a couple,
like something to go on like an arc with him.
Yeah,
goddamn,
dude. There's a couple like how did they do that shots during the car chase? The camera gets in one car and is looking at the driver, pulls out of the window, like pans then across the street, and then gets in the car that's chasing the first car. And like gets in the back and then looks at the second driver.
Yeah.
It's like, how the fuck, how did they do that?
Yeah.
There's a lot of really slick stuff like that. That just makes it super splashy. But again, like the first movie, even though everything's a little bit grander and played a little bit bigger, it gives you that same sense of adrenaline and same sense of, I am in the passenger seat of this car with them. The stakes are real. Like bodies are falling. This is nuts. Like you are in the movie in the same way, which is a huge accomplishment. It's great.
Incredible. I wonder if there's any like stuff in the works for like a third one. Honestly, plots canceled sequel. Fuck me.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah. Director Evans said that he is planning to take a break from martial arts movies for 2 or 3 years before filming it. The Raid 3 was planned for 2018 or 2019 release.
Dang.
Was on hold, with the franchise likely having ended, stating moving back to UK felt like a closing chapter on that franchise. Fuck. Well, there's that.
Dang.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, and you know, this kind of takes us to, you know, we've kind of been taking shots at this part of the conversation for the whole episode, but it's kind of a damn shame like how underseen the Raid and the Raid 2 are just as action movies, because you know, really like what I would say is the standard in America for action movies the last, I don't know, probably like 5 or 6 years are those 2 John Wick movies, but those are Raid movies. Those are like those, you know, we said it before we got on the air. John Wick is the Raid with guns. It is the same style of. I don't think it's as good. I think Keanu's great and perfect in it. I think the kind of like mythos of the assassins is kind of cool. I think the like simplicity of the plot, like this guy's wife died and these dudes took his dog, so he's gonna get revenge. Like fine, like that's totally cool. But I watch John Wick and I'm like, this is only as awesome as it is because the Raid came out 3 years ago.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly. Right. I don't know if the production crew, the director for John Wick saw the Raid. I want to say he did. I want to say I was watching some behind the scenes shit, and someone mentioned the Raid, and I was like, oh yeah, that's pretty comparable. But you know, since you mentioned it, it kind of follows like the same thing too. The first one's like a lot lower budget, very constricted on like the type of scenes and stuff that they could have, and so they have to kind of like work with what they have. And then the second one's budget's like ballooned way up. It's way more dramatic. There are a lot more like really theatrical characters. Common's fucking in it as like an assassin,
right.
You know?
Yes.
I don't actually really like the second one all that much. It's not bad, but like
it's fine.
People like it has like a 90-something% on Rotten Tomatoes, I think, or maybe I don't know. It's got a pretty high score on like Rotten Tomatoes, and it wasn't nearly as good as the first one. But it sort of follows like that same arc too. So I think you're absolutely right. Like without the Raid, there wouldn't be John Wick, or it wouldn't be as enjoyable. You know, it would be closer to Taken than it is to John Wick.
Right. And it makes John Wick kind of weird to talk about with people because those movies were super successful and they're popular, and a lot of people will like rent them or stream them now, and they're like, oh, I kind of like feeling like an action movie. Oh, John Wick's supposed to be good. And then they're like, oh my God, have you seen John Wick? And I'm like, yeah, I've seen John Wick. I've seen movies that like you wouldn't believe it, but they up the ante of how like great John Wick's action is. I think the way John Wick uses guns is really awesome and really cool, but The Raid 2 does a lot of the similar shit.
I've seen a guy put a fucking like light bulb up someone's asshole. Like there's no coming back from that. You don't understand what I've seen. And like it makes us kind of sound pretentious where we're like, oh well,
I know.
John Wick is The Raid, but like motherfucker, John Wick is The Raid. Like you got to see it. Like you won't believe. Like you won't be able to look at John Wick the same way. And like I completely agree with you. John Wick is an awesome action movie, but I've seen better.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I don't want to sound like a dick, but I have to give credit where credit's due.
Right. You put it really well. Like John Wick is awesome. John Wick is so good. If I had seen it first, I would like it so much more. But The Raid is so good that it spoiled John Wick for me.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
And John Wick's
that's unfortunate.
Like, right. Like John Wick's incredible, but that's how good The Raid is.
Yeah.
Is the Raid's excellence made John Wick seem like, oh, well, I had seen this before.
Yeah, exactly. Just with
most people had it. And most people had
Yeah.
it. So, I mean, and I think that's sort of like the bummer of a punctuation mark on this whole conversation is, you know, we look at these Marvel movies, which action just never feels real. Like there's so much, like you really feel the computers.
Yeah.
You really feel like, okay, this is like fake Robert Downey Jr. on a couple of ropes flying around pretending to shoot lasers out of his hands. And it just like those are always kind of challenging. We have these runs of like grizzled old man action movies where like Denzel unfortunately is like doing like
the Equalizer
you know, and,
yeah
and Liam Neeson had his run too.
What's his face had one. Sean Penn had one.
Oh gosh, you're right. Yeah, Pierce Brosnan had a couple.
The November Man.
Yeah.
Oh fuck. Yeah, it was 2008 to 2013 was just, there was Taken and then everything else was garbage.
Right. And you know, it's funny because it's not like The Raid was like this pocket Indonesian movie.
Yeah.
It has a director from the UK.
Yeah.
And this guy's just super talented at directing action. And so it's not like the Raid had this like crazy hard to replicate recipe.
Yeah, it was just people who gave a shit and weren't necessarily in it for the money. Because Marvel movies, like, the reason I don't like them is because I can tell nobody there gives a fuck. I know Benedict Cumberbatch doesn't give a fuck about his character. I know. I know he doesn't read the comic books. Like, I know he doesn't. I know that man doesn't. He's just in it because say he loses the lower half of his body tomorrow. Just on the couple movies that he's been in the Marvel Cinematic, he never has to work again. That's it. You just do these movies, and then you could do whatever the fuck else you want for the rest of your career. It's a done deal. So I get it. I get why Robert Downey Jr. did it. I get why, like, the Hulk. That guy.
Oh, Mark Ruffalo.
Mark Ruffalo, who's a way better actor than like the Hulk deserves, honestly. Like these people are way better. Brie Larson, like they're way better than the characters that they portray. They just do it because, like, man, it's a lot of fucking money. And it shows to people who like can't accept that. There are plenty of people out there that are like, I just like the comic book heroes and I just like seeing Spider-Man sling some web. And I'm like, okay, like that does nothing for me. If it does something for you, that's totally fine. But like, you can't honestly sit down and tell me that, again, nothing against Black Panther, not my type of movie. People are talking Oscar nomination, like for Best Picture.
Oh, yeah.
Best. Yeah. And meanwhile, you have something like The Black Klansman comes out, just as politically important, just as economically important to the entire country. And it's somehow in the same running as Black Panther. Come on. One of them is clearly better than the other.
Yeah. It's, it's like you cleared a 3-foot hurdle versus a 6-foot hurdle.
Yeah.
And both runners are going to be in the best picture race. Well, that kind of worked out, didn't it?
Yeah, perfect.
But
the perfect analogy.
I think
coming off that steak on a paper plate.
Hell yeah, man. I'm gonna milk that for a while. But I think what this comes back to, which is so great about The Raid and The Raid 2, is in a way that is exhilarating and exciting and fresh. There's the sheer amount of work that went into the movies just comes off the screen, and it's exciting to be a part of that and be like, wow, look at all the effort. Look at these people who like just really gave a shit, who sacrificed their bodies, who like trained, and how many times must they practice that shot? I don't know. How did they choreograph that? Like, these movies are so simple, but there's still, as we've said a lot, there's just a lot of like, wow, how did they do that?
Yeah.
And that's impressive, and it feels like a real accomplishment instead of, movies that were mostly generated in post, which
green screen movies. It's like, how did they do that? Well, I'll show you. You open up a MacBook and you could do the same fucking thing in your living room.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll leave it there in terms of The Raid. I don't know if you can stream it for free anywhere.
I know it used to be on Netflix for the longest time, but I have no idea. Let me check, actually. Keep talking. Do your thing. I'm just gonna check.
Yeah. While Emilio checks on that, I mean, regardless, it's worth a $3 Amazon rental.
It really is. If you have Stars, you can watch it on there, or you can rent it for like $2-3 on Amazon or YouTube or anything.
Yeah, gosh, money well spent.
Stars. Do I have Stars? Probably not. No, I don't. Shit.
Damn it.
Okay.
But that is The Raid and The Raid 2. I mean, the elevator pitches, they're two of the greatest action movies ever made.
Yeah. Like do yourself a favor. Spend $6 on an afternoon watching them back to back. Just, wear some comfortable pants and like bring a knee brace if you have weak knees. Cause like, I shit you not, you and I walking first off, I saw the movie like 4 times in theaters, but the first and second time that I watched it with my first group of friends and then you, both times I literally walked out of the theater and I could barely stand up. And that is not an exaggeration.
Yeah, like you're tense. It's an exercise watching it. Yeah. But damn, they're so good. So we're gonna leave The Raid and The Raid 2 there. We love these movies. But Emilio, for the grab bag, was there anything in the past week you revisited a childhood classic?
Jinx.
Yeah.
I watched the first 4 seasons of SpongeBob SquarePants.
Hell yeah.
Really good. It's funny, man. Shit. It was incredible how many lines from that show I could still repeat like perfectly, like tonally. I could get the tone right. That's how like ingrained into my like psyche those episodes are. And dude, they still hold up. They're still fucking funny. Like, maybe not the 4th season. That's sort of when the show started like getting just a little like too childish. But like the humor in the first 3 is like, it's hysterical. And a lot of it is just like the animators just being able to kind of do something that wasn't really done in a lot of like, they used like a lot of like movie-esque shots and stuff and like deadpan, breaking the fourth wall a lot. Like they just do a bunch of that stuff that at the time a lot of cartoons maybe weren't doing. Obviously people will reference things like Rocko's Modern Life and like Angry Beavers and stuff like that, but SpongeBob was in a league of its own. And I guess they're still coming out with new episodes, right? Like, what the fuck, man? Oh,
I think
and
so.
the creator just like got diagnosed with cancer or something, so he might die.
Oh, really?
I know, it's sad. But so it started in like 1998, so it's been on for 20 fucking years. You know, I can't believe that. And the first like 3 episodes, the first 3 seasons are still the best. Like you have episodes like Band Geeks, the Pie episode, the fucking Krusty Krab, like the
training video,
the pizza episode, like all of the classics are within the first 3 seasons. Like within the first 3 seasons. The bully episode, the one where like Patrick and him try and save the classroom pet egg thing, the one where they go like alien hunting, all within the first 3 years of that show. So it's incredible. It's on Amazon. If you have it, enjoy it. Only the first 4 seasons are up, but that's all you fucking need.
Great. SpongeBob SquarePants.
Maybe you've heard of it.
So, yeah, maybe you've heard of it. My show is a new one that premiered on Netflix last Friday, September 21st. It's a miniseries called Maniac. Have you heard of this show?
Yeah, it's the one with Jonah Hill and Emma Stone that I haven't gotten around to watching yet.
Yeah, it's great. I think when, especially like with TV that kind of falls into my job, my kind of baseline of TV is all over the place. I kind of like something that will sort of break me out of a television routine that I get from like, kind of workplace sitcoms or I don't know, like bad men doing bad things, dramas, and, like basically like shows about food.
Yeah. Do you have to review that shit? You don't like review like Nailed It or like Cake Boss and stuff. Yeah.
No, honestly, like I curate most of what I do, so I get to pick and choose. So I chose to review Maniac, and this is a 10-part miniseries from Cary Fukunaga, who directed the first season of True Detective, and did Beasts of No Nation on Netflix. So talented dude. He wrote some of the episodes with another writer as well, but it's just a really creative, dynamic, fast-paced, surprising show. It's about these two characters, Jonah Hill and Emma Stone, participate in this experimental drug trial, and the 3 rounds of the drug trial take them to these mental headspaces that basically just like I don't want to ruin it because half the fun is, oh, where are we going to go next? Oh my gosh, I can't believe we're about to see something that is more like a, like honestly, like Coen Brothers movie or like a Christopher Nolan heist movie.
So they kind of like occupy these characters, so they get zapped away to something like Fargo, and then they're like Fargo-esque characters in this like mini sort of story. Then,
yeah, that's a way to say it for sure.
It's not a good way, but it's a way.
No, that actually was a smart take.
Laugh, damn it.
No, but yeah, they essentially play a lot with genre that way. So each episode kind of has a little bit of a different kind of like flavor of the month kind of thing going on. It changes up a lot, and yeah, it's the kind of thing you don't want to say too much about because you kind of just want to let it happen to people. But I super recommend it. It's 10 episodes. Episodes are like 25 to 40 minutes, kind of like vary a little bit. So easy to rip right through and kind of leaves you thinking a little bit. It's great. Cool. So that is Maniac. It's on Netflix. And that will do it for the grab bag this week and this episode of Dude Is This Thing On as a whole. Emilio, if people want to look into our archives, find old episodes, find this one, where can they do that?
Well, hopefully I'll be able to get this one uploaded. But if you want to look at our older stuff up until maybe a few weeks ago, you can look us up on YouTube, Dude Is This Thing On. We also have a Facebook. That's just Dude Is This Thing On or Ditto. We have both. And you can look at some of our really old stuff on SoundCloud. It's not necessarily all that recent, but it's there. Just look us up, Dude Is This Thing On.
There you are. And if you all want to follow what I do here at the magazine, you can look up all my culture writing at relevantmagazine.com, including my review of Maniac. Or you can just shoot me a follow on Twitter at Tyler Daswick. But that will do it for this episode of Dude Is This Thing On. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. We'll see you next time.
See you guys.